I'm Sue Haywood and I'm Head of Community Safety for the local authority, and I also help to coordinate the work of Safe and Sound, which is Dudley's Community Safety Partnership, and I'll say a bit more about Safe and Sound later, and I'll mention the bookmarks and pens later as well. We don't do many freebies now, but we've produced those because they've got some contact details on. So, okay. So my first slide is just to give a bit of context really about what is community safety, and I have looked at some of the feedback, particularly from the first weekend, and when I was looking at a bit of a definition for today, some of what came up at the first weekend really kind of resonated with some of the definitions. Okay.
Sorry.
So community safety is about feeling safe, whether you're at home, in the streets or at work. And it's about promoting the concept of community-based action to prevent and to remedy the causes and consequences of criminal, intimidatory and other antisocial behaviours. And it's about feeling safe. So a safe community is a place that is attractive to live, work and visit, and I know that's certainly come up in the discussions. And it's also about a livable community where people can go about their daily business and daily lives in an environment without fear or risk of harm. And we also know that good community safety outcomes also contribute to health and well-being. So if you feel safe in the environment where you're living, working or visiting, that also gives some good health and well-being outcomes as well. So that's just a bit of context around community safety and picking up on some of the work that I know has come out over the last week or so. So moving on to the next slide then. In terms of how can we work together to improve community safety, which was what I was asked to say a bit about this morning. So what is really important, and I think the People's Panel has started to move in the right direction, is around engaging, listening and communicating. So I know a lot of messages have come out of the People's Panel, and it's around how we join those messages up from members of the community in the broadest sense that have been involved in the panel last weekend and this weekend. And also where we've heard messages from other consultation. We've just recently been doing some work around a violence prevention strategy, which we're developing for to be launched next year. And certainly some of the messages are the same about wanting to feel safe around the environment and around communities being part of the solutions as well. And we had some real practical examples, which I'll touch on later. And I know those examples have been coming out over the last couple of weekends. So we need to work together around leadership and partnership. And it's about us all being leaders and working together, listening to people's experience, looking at how we can bring that experience together, how we can bring together expert knowledge and how we can change things. And in terms of vision and change, I know that there are plans already in train around some developments, for example in Dudley and in sort of the waterfront at Maryhill. But it's about how do we have an eye to the future really, how can we blend the old and the new to create safe and vibrant communities. So I know it's a big ask, and those two small words can mean a lot, but it's about how can we blend things together to maximise some of the heritage that we have got, but also change things for the better and moving forward. And I know over the last couple of weekends as well, words have come up around the environment, and certainly as a local authority, as a council, and working in with partners, particularly police partners, we can look at what's called designing out crime, trying not to use jargon, but we can, when we're looking at particularly new developments or trying to improve what we've got, do some real practical things around being clean, and I know certainly in the budget proposals for next year, there are proposals around the environment and around street cleansing, etc. We've also got proposals around further developments around the CCTV and around street lighting. So it's how can we make communities safer through what we've already got and looking ahead to. And around planning as well, I know one of my colleagues from Planning and Regeneration will be here this afternoon. But in terms of looking at the spaces that we've got and accessibility to the town centres, we know we've got the metro that will be coming shortly. But it's around how we can make the town centres accessible for public transport, but also those members of the public that use cars as well. So around sort of parking and how can we improve the car parks. And again, we can work with partners around car parks called Secure by Design. So there are some initiatives that we can work in partnership to take forward. And empty buildings, I haven't seen that post-it note yet, but I'm sure that will have come up at some point. So it's how can we creatively use some of the empty shops or buildings that we have got. And I know there can be an impact for the local authority in terms of the business rates, but it's how can we work together. I know, for example, in some town centres, a couple of empty shops have been used for like what they call cop shops, so where people can drop in for advice. I know there's one in Halesowen, there's one in Stourbridge, and Briley Hill Market is used occasionally. That's just one example, but what else could we use those empty buildings for? There's a space there, how can we use that resource? And then in terms of pride in communities, I know there's been some ideas through the People's Panel and also through the violence prevention consultation around how communities can be involved. So it's around how can we celebrate our success, what social events could we put on together, how can we use ideas from the community. We know art and entertainment and food always attract people, good ways of engaging and a good ways of communities coming together and building those relationships. And in terms of building relationships, that's what we kind of call community cohesion, a broad umbrella. But in terms of community cohesion and communities feeling safe and coming together, certainly entertainment is a good way of doing that. So obviously we'll be looking at the post-it notes that have been put on the walls and looking at where we can take some of those ideas forward. The other item I've put on the slide is around teenage markets. I'm not sure that we've had one this year, but certainly over the last few years, in terms of engaging with young people, but also adults as well. So some intergenerational work. Is there anything that we can do to encourage and work with our young people to give them opportunities to be creative and around business opportunities as well? So that's just a thought. And I know certainly the local authorities communication and public affairs team has supported the teenage markets in the past. So if that's something that the panel felt might be a way forward, we can take that back to colleagues within the local authority. So that's just a few ideas there. I know others will come up during the morning and I will be around during the day, so happy to discuss other initiatives. Just thinking as well around business communities. We know in Halesowen they've got what's called a business improvement district, and that is where businesses do contribute slightly extra through the business rates, but they come together, and certainly a lot of work has been done in Halesowen around safety through the use of retail radios. I know they're looking at the possibilities of some wardens as well, but that also business improvement districts can kind of help to regenerate areas and bring that vibrancy too. So moving on to my last slide, she says, hopefully the technology is working behind me. Just to look at kind of what we can do. I do know from the first weekend, obviously concerns do come up. There's some bookmarks on the table that say how to report concerns. We've tried to keep the reporting methods to a minimum. So basically, if there's anything around the environment, so street, green care, antisocial behaviour, there's a Dudley Council Plus number, and Dudley Council Plus will ensure that I've got a zero. Does that mean I've run out of time? Oh gosh.
So, and we do have to move you on,
Oh.
but
Sue is here for the whole day.
And could I just have 2 seconds to make an offer?
go on then.
Just the last bullet point. Sorry, I should have timed my presentation. I really didn't think I was going to fill the time when I timed it first of all. And obviously this will probably come out during the morning or afternoon. We do have a community safety partnership within the borough, and town centre safety isn't explicitly a priority at the moment. We do have a board meeting on the 27th of January, and the offer would be if from the People's Panel, town centre safety would be a priority you'd want us to look at for 2020 and going forward. I can take that back to the partnership, but I will be around to discuss the other priorities later. Sorry for overrunning.
Right.